thing I've learned about life is that it's really important to pay attention to details, okay? And people who pay attention to details and follow through and notice things tend to do a really good job at a lot of different things. What do you guys notice about this, first of all?
Pretty long.
Whoa, that's one of the first things I thought when I saw this pig, right here.
It's only half a pig.
It's only half a pig, you're right, good job. Which half of the pig is it? Is it the right or the left half?
Outside.
It's the outside. What else? Anybody else? What's that? It's the right side. What else did you notice about this? Did anybody notice the little stamps on it? Okay. So that is the USDA inspection stamp that said this pig was, what is it, harvested in a sanitary plant and is wholesome to eat, okay? And it's a little round stamp. It has US there and inspection service, and it has the plant number. The number of the plant that it was harvested in is on there, and it was stamped on the ham and also on the loin. There's another little stamp right there, but it's not legible to read. So, have you guys ever seen one of these stamps when you buy a piece of meat? Yeah, you haven't? They typically don't cut this off. This is typically blueberry juice that they use to use for the stamp. So it's edible. It's not gonna. So if you see a little bit of blue on a steak or a pork chop or something, it's probably just the inspection stamp. It's not gonna be a problem. Okay. So another thing we notice is we've had the feet removed. A lot of the industry leaves the hide on. This pig has been skinned, okay? So we've skinned the hide off, and we don't have that. Also, there's a little bit of what we call slaughter damage, and we don't know why this pig had slaughter damage, but this flank muscle is missing. So it may have been bruised, or there may have been an abscess, or there may have punctured a gut and got a little bit of fecal material on it, and they trimmed that off. For whatever reason, it's not there anymore. Okay, so, all right. Any questions while we're starting? So we're gonna, this is the outside. We're gonna flip this pig over to the inside, and we're going to start separating this based off the bone structure and a few things like that. First of all, we've got $1 million question for you guys. And the $1 million question is, how many ribs does a pig have? We know 30.
It's my guess.
Okay,
15.
you may be right if we count them on both sides, but on one side, how many ribs does a pig have?
15.
15, okay. Now lamb and steer, they have typically 13. How many does a pig have? 11, okay. All right. Well, typically oh, go ahead. 13, okay. And most of you are close. They can have anywhere from 13 to 16 ribs. Okay, as we've made pigs longer, we use genetics to increase our body length, and that's increased the necessity for more ribs. So I need somebody to come up here and count the ribs for me. I need to have the young lady right here. Put on just a one glove here. Right there's the first one. 15? You got 15 or 14? 14. All right. Okay. So this pig has, you said 15 ribs, right? 14? 14 or 15. We don't know. We can't really count. So typically what we'll do is we'll start breaking this pig down. We're gonna split our hog between the second and third ribs. Now, some people, I don't know if we have the Spencers here, are custom cut. They may split it between the fifth and sixth rib. There's people out there that do. If you're doing the European method, you may split it between the first and second rib. Okay? So there's a little bit of variance on where we can make that split. Why would we want to make the split at the fourth and fifth rib rather than the second and third rib? What would that do to our carcass? For instance, if we move this cut mark up 2 ribs, what would that do?
Give you more meat on the cut?
Do it what?
Give you more meat on the cut?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about the loin being lower priced than the Boston butt. If we move, see it right here is the loin muscle. If we move our cut down on the loin, we're putting more weight on the butt and less weight on the loin, so we'd actually be making more money, right? Okay. All right, so we need a volunteer. Who can come right up here? Grab a glove.
Just one or two?
You might need 2. We're gonna have you do some work.
Okay.
Right between the second and third rib.
Right
So,
there?
yep, just make a straight line, just right down like that
Okay.
with this saw.
Saw.
Okay, so I'll get it started for you. And I've got the blade on backwards. That's not going to work very well for you. Okay, so just go. All right, go ahead and just start cutting.
Oh,
And
that's cold.
it's cold meat. It's been in the refrigerator. Notice you can hear that grinding sound as he's cutting through. He's cutting through the bone, and then once he gets through the bone, we'll cut the rest of the way with a knife to. You almost got her. Okay, I think you got her.
I think I did too.
All right, good job. So we'll just take the knife. We won't have you cut with a knife because. Okay, now we have the shoulder blade we need to cut through. Cut through that next bone. So he's cutting through the shoulder blade. While we're cutting through the shoulder blade, why is the loin such a tender muscle? Or why is it so desirable? Whereas the shank muscle is a lot tougher. Why do you suppose that?
The line's not used as often as the plate.
That's it, absolutely correct. So the loin muscle is a muscle of support, and it just holds the body in place, holds the spinal column in place. The leg muscle or the shank muscle, it's a muscle of locomotion. And so it has lots of connective tissue, and it's really tough, or tends to be tougher than the loin muscle. Okay? And we're making you earn your money today, aren't we? Did you get through yet?
Not
You
quite.
want me to help you out? I think you basically got it, but we'll just give her a couple more little pulls. Okay, we've removed the front shoulder. All right, and actually we need to remove the jowl. Okay, So that's the jowl right there. This is a little, what are they called? Where's our vet? A gland, their gland, oh, what are they called? Lymph nodes, yeah, thank you. How's that? Anyway, what is the jowl used for? You guys ever heard of jowl bacon? And it's not very popular around here, but so we'll either grind this or I think in the South they will cure that for bacon. Not a real big thing out here. So we have our front shoulder, which comprises of 2 cuts of meat. What are they? 2 primals. You guys remember? The Boston butt and what? Somebody said picnic? Picnic. All right, so now we need to separate those 2. And typically the Boston butt is going to be the piece that has more meat, more and less bone in it. All right. So we'll just cut it about right there, and I'll just go ahead and do that. All right.
Can I go sit down?
Yep, you can go sit down. Oh, before I do that, one of the cool things about the front shoulder of sheep, cows, pigs, anything that walks around on 4 legs, is that they have the leg muscle, and they have the shoulder blade, and they have the spinal cord and the ribs, but none of those are connected with a bone. Because we can take a knife and we can jab that knife all the way through without hitting anything, okay? And so that gives us an indication that, yeah, those muscles are going to be a lot tougher and have a lot more connective tissue in that region. So if we're cooking those types of meat, pieces of meat that have more connective tissue, what do we need to do during the cooking process? Who's going to answer that question? Cook them for a long time, slower temperature. Try to get away from me. Okay, so there we have our picnic, which is lower leg. It's worth about, what, $5? Then we have our Boston butt, which is worth about what, $10? Okay. All right. Oh no. We're just cleaning a little bit of this belly fat out. Throw that right over there. So now what we have left is we have our loin and our ham. We need another volunteer to come take the ham off. Who hasn't volunteered? Right back here. So through our ham bone, we've got to cut through the femur and grab you some gloves, and the H bone, which is the pelvis bone. All right. And what we'll do is we kind of draw a line perpendicular down the hock. So we draw a line kind of straight like that, and then we want to make a cut perpendicular to that, about 2 finger widths off from this H bone. So it'd be right there. Go ahead. Another important thing that we need to realize, and some of you I know this, but breaking down or fabricating a carcass is a lot of work. And when we sell the live animal for 55 cents a pound and the carcass is worth 70 cents a pound, we get I think mad or something, or we have bad feelings because they're getting 20 more cents than we are. But it is actually a lot of work to break this carcass down into usable pieces of meat. Here it is. I'll kind of put a little pressure on for you. There we go. All right. And if we've done a really good job cutting, it should stand up straight, just like that. So perfect, nice job. So that is typically our ham. We would probably, if we were going to do this commercially, we'd pull this shank muscle off, maybe debone it, and then cure it, and turn it into ham. Okay, thank you. All right, so now.
So how many hams are on board?
There'd be two. So this is the back leg muscle right here. So we could cut this up into several different pieces and make as many hams as you wanted, but typically the leg or the wholesale cut that we call ham there'd be two. Okay, so what have we got left?
The loin.
We got the loin. We got three. The bacon or the belly.
The ribs.
And the ribs. Okay. All right. So what we want to do real quick is take those off, and we'll start right below the rib cage there. And come out right about there. Okay, have we got another volunteer real quick? Big man over here. We'll go boy, girl, how's that? Yep, just cut through all of them. Are there any questions while we're cutting? Okay, go ahead and I'll hold it. Okay, that's good, perfect. We got the bone. Okay, have you guys ever heard of a term called fresh side pork?
No. I haven't.
Anybody else? Fresh side pork. Anybody know what fresh side pork is? Well, after today, you will know what fresh side pork is because we're going to be eating that for lunch. Basically, fresh side pork is uncured bacon.
Question.
Yes.
When is a good pig turned into a sausage pig?
Question is, when does a good pig turn into a sausage pig? I would probably say age. Most of our pigs are 5 to 7, 8 months old. So if you probably get up over a year of age or 10 months, 12 months of age, then you're probably getting turned into a sausage pig.
Is there any part of
What's that?
is there any part of an old pig that you can actually eat besides grinding it all up?
I don't have a lot of experience with that, so I don't know.
Okay,
I would think that if you aged it for a while, it would tender up. Like the loin muscle, the tenderloins, you should be able to eat those. Okay, so we pulled. These are the ribs. This is what we call the spare ribs. All right, you can see the bones right in there. Have you guys heard of St. Louis style ribs? St. Louis style ribs? Well, there's a little bit of cartilage, it's the sternum, and if we just take our knife, it's got a lot of cartilage, and we cut that off and then probably square it up just a little bit. We can go buy those are St. Louis style ribs right there. And basically the only difference between the St. Louis style ribs and the spare ribs is that this has a lot of cartilage in with it, and it's not as pleasant an eating experience. Okay, and now we have our bacon. Okay. Does that look like bacon to you guys? It does?
Kind of. Not yet.
Not yet. What does it need to happen to make bacon?
Need to be cooked.
Need to be cooked. Also, does that look a little bit more like bacon? Okay. So we can see the muscle structure, but typically with bacon we inject it with salt, sugar, sodium nitrite, and let it cure, and it turns kind of a pink color, and we cook it partially, and then we slice it real thin and sell it in the store, and that would be our bacon. This pig is fairly lean. We're going to check the back fat, but typically if you have less than a ½ inch back fat, your bacon isn't going to be very good. It's going to be too lean, and it's not going to make good bacon. We'll just have to grind it for sausage. Now the fresh side, this is just fresh side right here, and we'll make a Dutch oven full of fresh side out there and fry it up, and you guys can all try it. Basically, it's uncured bacon, so we just put the salt, pepper. We don't put sugar or anything like that. We just put a seasoning on it, fry it up, and it's pretty darn tasty. Okay. So again, what is the most valuable piece of meat on the pig? Well, last Thursday,
Boston butt. Boston butt.
last Thursday it was this piece of meat right here, $22 for this, right?
Boston butt.
For the bacon. So now we come down to the loin, and there's 3 or 4 different things that we can talk about with the loin. We've got the sirloin back here towards the back end, which makes some really good steaks. We've got the tenderloin, which sits underneath the vertebrae, and it's one of those muscles that's used very little, and so that's why we call it the tenderloin. It's very tender. We'll just pull that out really quick, and it'd be nice to have 3 or 4 of these, so we could let everybody get a taste. Okay, so that's the tenderloin, and what we'd do is trim up some of this fat and connective tissue, and you can buy those in the store. They're actually fairly expensive, but that came right from this little section right here, okay? Right underneath the vertebrae on the inside of the animal, and that's the tenderloin. I'm just gonna pop this sirloin off really quick. Okay, so there's the sirloin. We'll be eating that today. And what time have we got? I'm through with my time yet? 11:30. Okay, we're doing pretty good here. So we're just gonna pop this loin muscle out so you can see where a loin chop, or quite often they're called pork chops. One thing that I noticed about this pig when I first saw it was that it was not a really heavily muscled pig. It was a little more shallow muscled, and you can kind of see this would be the back of your pig, and when you can see your pig where it rainbows out when you're looking over the back, notice this pig doesn't do that. It's just pretty shallow in there. All right, any questions?
Why is it shallow?
Because it's not as heavily muscled. So it doesn't have as big of muscles as some of the other pigs we... Okay, well, if you don't have a question, I got a question for you. What do you call a pig that knows karate?
Pork chop.
Oh, yeah, steal my thunder. Did you know that, or did you?
She did.
Oh, okay. So I'm trying just to follow the bone. And pull this loin muscle out. And you guys have heard of the term baby back ribs, right? Everybody likes to go to, those are pretty yummy, aren't they? Where do they come from?
A baby pig. A
Baby-
baby back.
Baby
Baby's
pigs?
back. Baby
Baby's
pig.
back?
Baby pig's back. Yeah.
They're really good. They're really tender, right? So if they're really tender, if you think about it, the belly muscle, every time an animal breathes, it's moving, right? Those belly, the muscles between the ribs, they help breathe, and so those muscles are working quite often. Whereas, so with ribs like those St. Louis style ribs, we would probably need to cook those for quite a long time. Okay, so we've pulled, this is the backbone. These are where the ribs would come off, okay? The baby back ribs, see if I can pull those out really quick, and we need to be wrapping up because we got sometimes they're a little bit challenging. Anyway, I'll just point them out because it's a lot easier to do it when you have a power bandsaw, but you can do it with a knife. But your baby back ribs are these ribs that sit right underneath here, okay? So they're very tender. You do have to cook them for a very long time, but they're scrumptiously good. Let's talk about the loin really quick. And talk about back fat. Okay, so there's a picture of the loin. Okay, that's a loin chop is typically what we call that. What do you guys think about the back fat on this pig? Is it industry standard? It's maybe at the most, typically where we measure back fat is 3/4 of the way down from the ribeye, about right in there. And we're probably about a 1/2 inch. I should have brought a tape measure so that we could measure that. So this pig is really borderline on what the industry wants, what we want to produce for our people who buy our animals at the livestock show. With that, who wants to volunteer to put it back together? Okay. Yes, question. Oh, you want to put it back together? Okay. All right.
I have a real quick question. How do you get boneless ribs? Is it just the meat, do they actually,
So you're saying country style ribs?
yeah, boneless,
So
just the meat?
country style,
Chalk and press?
country style ribs.
I didn't mean for you to put your gloves back on, I just,
Well, my hands are sweaty, so they're not going on very good, but we'll so country style rib is we'll just take a muscle from the loin muscle, which is close to the head. So like that, we've taken that muscle out there, and we'll just come and cut it like about right there, and then just make it into a boneless rib. So it actually comes from, it's not from the rib. I mean, it's close to the rib, but all muscles are close to the rib. So anyway,
I just pictured them, taking each little tiny strip between that. But
that costs a lot of money to do that.